Happy Monday, everyone.
Happy Monday and happy Children's Day. Welcome to the Monday Duo podcast.
Yes, today we're talking about well-being and mental health, but not yours or mine. For Children's Day, we want to highlight that it is a day about children's rights, their voices, and their well-being. It's not only just about gifts. So today we're joined by Eleni.
Hi,
Hi. Hi,
Eleni.
Eleni. So Eleni is a board member of NGO Love 21 Foundation in Hong Kong, which supports children with Down syndrome, autism, and other neurodiverse disabilities. So Eleni, tell us a little bit more about you and the organization that you're working with.
Yes. Well, first of all, let me start by saying thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure to be with you today. Um, a little bit about myself. I started my career actually as a teacher, as an educator. And during those early years in the classroom, I used to work with students I realized were learning in different ways. So after a couple of years, I wanted to kind of better support the students in my class who had those kind of learning differences. So I decided to kind of go on a 1 year course around learning disabilities, and that kind of sparked my interest around that group that is quite, I think there's a lot more support nowadays and a lot more awareness, but back then it was still kind of an area that was, being explored. And that really opened my eyes to kind of the importance of being inclusive and inclusive learning and understanding neurodiversity. And then kind of that fast forwarded me to my kind of role today as a board member on the NGO Love 21 Foundation, because I felt like it really aligned with something that was important to me since the beginning of my career. But I'm also, like both of you, a very avid volunteer. I believe in volunteering and giving our time and anything else that we're willing to give back to the community. So that really gave my passion the opportunity to join the board, really kind of allowed me to reconnect with my passion and contribute in this small way to this community that deserves a lot more, I think, awareness and support. Love 21 is an organization that helps the neurodiverse community here in Hong Kong from a very holistic perspective. The organization started with our founder, Jeff Rotmeyer, who actually wanted to help this community be healthier. So it started by focusing on sports, on nutrition, on helping them live longer by having, healthier lives. But now the organization is transitioning into a holistic model that also takes care of the carers and their families, which is also really important. They also need a lot of support as well. And moving towards also counseling, towards speech therapy. So a very holistic model of helping that community, not just the individuals, but also the carers and their families.
Thank you, Eleni. Of course, we're going to dive in a little bit more about the foundation and your work as well. But actually, I met you through a work event, as we're both in human resources. I don't think, Magda, you know, actually. I didn't mention this to you.
No, I didn't know that.
But yeah, but I think we started talking and immediately we go into the
Yes,
volunteering topic, right? I think definitely because it's the passion that drew us together.
yes.
And because for me as well, we talked about it just now. I also started volunteering since I started working. And then actually, while I was working on this episode, um, actually almost 80% of the time is related to children's work, whether it's their education, their well-being. So this topic really is quite dear to me. And I remember at one point we were talking about maybe I can potentially support the organization with some of my nutrition work. And then the next day we're giving out hot meals to the homeless already. So
It's true.
I love that. I love that. And Magda as well, you mentioned being a volunteer also is something dear to you.
Yes, so like when I started my high school, I was really into the volunteering world, and I just want to help people and give my time to people that need that. And for me, volunteering is helping others, but it brings joy to me too, really. I was really moved by the volunteer work I have done. So I was volunteering in different foundations for different projects. And as our audience already know, I support social projects too. So I've heard a lot of stories from people that we are helping in many different ways, not only giving our time, but giving themselves a space to speak. So yeah, I think when people are volunteering, as you said, Cecilia, they are bond immediately. When you start talking about that, there is like this passion that we share to help others and to be there for other people. So I'm love that you are here today, Eleni. And today you will share more about your work and how inclusion is not just nice to have, but core of children's well-being, mental health, and a sense of worth. So I'm so happy that we are having you here in the Monday Duo podcast.
And I also want to learn more as well, because obviously I mentioned that a lot of my volunteering work evolve around children, but not in particular neurodiverse children. So for those who are actually not familiar with, you will have some takeaways to learn more together.
I hope so.
Yes.
So just to jump in, how did you start your volunteering work, Eleni? And what first drew you into working with neurodivergent children, those with Down syndrome, autism, ADHD, and other learning differences?
Um, my my interest first started back in my days as a teacher and as an educator, and kind of noticing how there were often a lot of misconceptions around that group of learners. And often that came with a lot of stigma. But not only that, I also noticed how the children were struggling, but also the teachers and the parents were struggling because they didn't necessarily know what they could do to help. So I started my own education journey, and I decided to do kind of like further my studies on this and understand quite in depth how to best support those students, what I can do as a teacher, but also when is the time to kind of direct people to professionals as and when needed. One of the most important things to understand is that neurodiversity is a spectrum, and people can be at different kind of levels at that spectrum. So sometimes we may or may not. It may or may not be very obvious that someone may be neurodivergent or a child might be neurodivergent. And the best thing to do is leave it to professionals to actually give that professional opinion. Um, I started volunteering on kind of different causes because I generally believe, like both of you, in volunteering as a value and as a core principle. So I started volunteering on different kind of NGOs, different organizations. And then when the opportunity came with Love 21, it kind of reconnected me back into kind of my educator days. And in my experience so far, there are many different ways to volunteer. Some people volunteer their time in a very hands-on way, like me and Cecilia did when we, delivered food to the homeless community. Um, for Love 21 in specific, it was a new way for me to give back through a board position. And that allowed me to have perhaps a broader and wider impact by helping the organization perform at its best so that they can then go on and help that community. So it's a different way of giving back, but I find it equally fulfilling, I have to say, because it allows for a greater impact, let's say, in my perception.
Did you start with Love 21 as a one-off volunteer and then gradually become a board member? How did the story
Actually,
go?
no. I knew members of the that were part of the board through other work that I have done on diversity and inclusion. And
Right.
because of my awareness on board governance and my experience on actually working as an employee in NGOs, gave me kind of like that advantage into being able to join the organization. But since
Mm.
then, I also do try to volunteer hands-on in our programs as well, because even how can I say this? Even when you are on a board position and your role is mainly governance, I believe it's important to stay in touch with the groundwork that the
Yeah.
organization does and being in touch with the actual beneficiaries and seeing firsthand the impact of the organization. This is a very personal, I'm not saying everyone should do this. I believe this is important to me.
Yeah.
And this is the way that I have been involved in the organization as well.
I see, because for me, it's mostly one-off volunteering, but I go with the
Yes.
same couple different, I think 3 to 4 organization, but most of the time it's just one-off, was it twice or third time? But Magda, with your social work, do you see that because you've been involved for quite many years and understand, do you feel like you can contribute more instead of just one-off volunteering?
Yes, so I work in social project. The social project that I'm working is around 15 years. It's celebrating 15 years this year, but I'm
Wow.
working still. I was 16, 17, starting as a volunteer and then working the full time. And I see how I'm really connect to that social project. It's part of my life, it's part of me. I never imagine missing an event with them, or, even right now when I'm a little bit jumping in from time to time, not working full time for them, I still like cannot imagine that I will not be there and not supporting them. And of course, I love jumping on some one-on-one, one work here for one foundation, one work here for another foundation, but to be involved for so many years, for so many hours, for so many time, to know the people that are around the organization, it links
Mm,
me so much more, and I can give more to that organization because I feel the connection, I feel the vibe with everybody there. And as I said, it's a big part of me. So I think this social project is just part of Magdalena, which I am.
I feel every type of contribution is valuable.
mm,
If I were kind of if someone asked me for advice and they said which one should I be doing, I say do the one that you're more comfortable with and that allows you to give back in any way that, aligns with your schedule, your principles, your values, so on and so forth. So I cannot say that one is more valuable than the other. I find for myself, I like having different ways of giving back. And so some of
mm,
the work that I do in terms of volunteering is with, very hands-on with specific organizations. And my involvement with Love 21 Foundation as a board member allows me to have a different perspective and give back in
yeah,
a different way that utilizes also a whole new different skill set of mine.
that's
So
true.
I get satisfaction from doing both, and I know that both are important to me, but I would encourage everyone to contribute in whatever way makes more
Mm.
sense to them.
Yeah, I love that. And we're going back to Love 21. So if I say I walk into one of your programs on a normal day, what would I see?
First of all, I think like one of the main things that you would see would be like all these children and young adults feeling like loved and safe where they
Mm,
are. And this is really important to us because one of the main kind of challenges in that community is loneliness, and
mm,
feeling, the lack of community, feeling the lack of support. So this is one of the first things that we want to make sure as an organization is that our beneficiaries feel that they are safe, that they are loved. And
mm,
this is one of our kind of key impact as well, kind of seeing the difference in terms of confidence when they first, join us versus a few months down the line or a couple of years down the line. Um, Very proud that at the moment we run more than 800 classes, uh,
great.
from sports to arts to cooking classes to nutrition consultations. So it is indeed that very holistic approach. And I think we have something like more than 90 types of activities. And I
Wow.
want to stress that because one of the other things that sometimes we miss out when it comes to the neurodiverse community is how most of us have a lot of opportunities to explore different activities in our lives and find what we like, what our passion is. That doesn't apply necessarily to everyone. And so it's really important for that community as well to have the opportunity to engage in different types of activities and find what their passion is. Maybe it's art, or maybe actually, you know what, I tried it and I don't like it and I'm better at football. So I think this is really important. The other thing that I want to mention that I'm very proud of is our living room, which is a space where the community can come together and they can either participate in activities or they can simply lounge and connect and just
Oh,
take
okay.
a break. And I think this is equally important, again, in that spirit of creating that safe community where people can communicate and coexist in a place where they
Support each
have
other, yeah.
exactly something in common. Exactly.
I love that. Like,
Where
I
is this?
remember I have one time volunteering in an event with neurodivergent children for, I think, when I was like in my high school or something like that. And even when I finished school, I just like come there to volunteer again once a year. And what I remember the most is a joy of that I have
Yes,
there. Like the
yes,
amount of hugs, amount of happiness,
yes,
amount of having fun, amount of like showing me that boundaries doesn't exist, that you can do
yes,
anything you can, that you can do anything you can imagine, that you can say
yes,
whatever you like. It was so inspiring, and I remember I was really fulfilled of the joy after this one day. I wasn't like I didn't necessarily remember that I was tired. I was really full of joy, and I was happy that I can, go back there again a year
I
after
love
and
that.
help them too. And that's thanks to the other questions of mine, because I know that children, the neurodivergent children, really still face some stigma, some isolation, some reduced access to education, to
Yes,
play, to health services. And is that true?
yes, it is very true. There's a lot of stigma, and for example, in Asia especially, there's a lot of the spirit of conformity, so not standing out, which is culturally rooted in a lot of Asian cultures. And so one of the kind of stigma that we see a lot in Asia, and more specifically also in Hong Kong and in mainland China, is bullying, that kind of lack of understanding of how people can be different, but that doesn't mean that they shouldn't have access to all these opportunities, to education, to health. There's high levels of stigma also amongst, again, the carers and the families. There's a type of stigma that called courtesy stigma that's very associated with the neurodiverse community, where the carers feel almost guilt or being judged because of their loved ones. And that, of course, causes a lot of kind of social and emotional toll. And actually, there's research that shows that it even leads to kind of, for sure, reduced quality of life, but it affects kind of in a very real way the health, not only mental health, but also physical health of the individuals, but also their carers. So for sure, in terms of education, in terms of play, in terms of health services, there is a lot of stigma that has very real implications. And one of the things that I find really interesting is even when it comes to assessing the numbers of, let's say, people in Hong Kong who have autism, what the government reports versus what NGOs that are in the space report can actually be very different and make a big difference also in the kind of support that this community receives.
Mm.
That's like,
But is
it's
the
so
number
hard
quite
to
similar?
hear that, even.
Yeah.
Like, I'm really sitting here so far
Yes,
away. Like, I think Poland has the same, like, all the Europe, I think all the countries had the same problems. I remember this joy and this happiness, and it's so hard to hear that we are still facing that problems. We are not talking about something that happens 100 years ago. We are talking about something that's
yes,
happening right now. And I'm I'm in huge shock, and I'm really like, it gives me like angry vibes in the middle like of our conversation. I'm really like try to want to do something with that. I want to like join against that. It's so sad.
And even like you mentioned, they have the joyous, affectionate as well. But I'm sure this has definitely a toll on their overall well-being and mental health too, right? Do you
Sure.
see that, Eleni?
And one of the main things that we see is through our programs, of course, exercise does help make you, for example, stronger or build certain skills. But one of the main things that we see is the boost of confidence that allows them to then do things that before they couldn't do when they first join us. And of course, some of it is kind of building the muscles or having a healthier lifestyle, but a lot of it is knowing that you can do it and having the confidence that they can do it and knowing that there are other people there that also believe in them and want to do it.
And I think like what is important here to say, like I remember these kids were like really afraid at first to approach us as a volunteers. And then when we approached them with the smile, with hugs, with how can I help you, like normal vibes, normal words, they were just like, they shared this joy immediately. So it was
Yeah.
first like they were scared, but then they just
Yes.
put everything they have on the plate. Okay, so for children with autism and Down syndrome, what changes do you see over months or years of sport?
There are, so one of, for example, like some of our impact assessments have to do with like actual strength. So we measure, for example, how many minutes someone, can hold a plank. And we were saying that every year we have like a new breaking of a record. Last year, one of our beneficiaries held a 6-minute plank. I cannot do that, I
Wow.
promise you.
Wow,
Me too.
that's
And
nice.
then, yes, and then this year we had someone who did an 8-minute plank and we were
Oh,
absolutely
wow.
Wow.
mind blown. But these are some of the measurements that actually like, strength,
Yeah.
muscle building, loss of weight as well is one of the kind of key impact assessments that we have. But kind of on a very small scale, one of the kind of examples that I remember vividly was one girl that had cerebral palsy, and she was not able in the beginning to even step over a hurdle. And then our founder Jeff was telling me how she had like initially like balance issues, and now she's jumping over them. So in the beginning couldn't even step, but now she's jumping over them. And
Wow.
again, this is, I think, like a combination between building muscles, having a healthier lifestyle, but at the same time, the belief and the confidence that I am unique, but that doesn't mean that I cannot do things or cannot do what everyone else is doing.
Mm.
Um, on a society level, I have to again praise the work of NGOs, Love 21. I know it's not the only organization, of course, that contributes, but every organization that contributes to that specific group helps raise awareness. And this is one of the key, if I had to say like a key message that I want people to take from today would be the importance of people understanding diversity and unique talents and having awareness
Mm.
of this individuality and uniqueness.
Yeah.
And like you said earlier, the more people engage with that community, the more they understand it, the less barriers and stigma that will exist. There is actual research that shows that when you have increased exposure to individuals, let's say, for example, again with autism or any kind of anywhere on the spectrum, they are contributing to reducing prejudice. So
Mm.
I think your example, I hope everyone can follow.
Yeah, so I think like in Poland there is a TV program that some years ago, and I know that this year will be a new edition of that. So there was a famous person who was traveling with 6 or 8 children with Down syndrome, and they were traveling around like countries near Poland, and they need to take care of themselves. They, of course, the crew helped them, but they were doing some extreme sports together, and there was like episodes about them, and they become quite famous in Poland. And what changed in the society thinking, I think, more people were like able to see that they are not different in a wrong way, but they are maybe different in a good way. They can show us how to like feel joy. There were a lot of comments on social media that they show us how to be really a good person, how to speak their emotions. And people really follow that show. And as I said, the second or the third season even coming this year. And I think this is one of the example how to help people change their thinkings, because I think we are sometimes scared to ask questions, to be there, and to like, even in my social project, the social project that I'm working, people are sometimes scared to ask, can you tell me your story, how you feel, or something like that. They are normal questions. And I think the one of the most important thing about volunteering work and about projects that help people to be better, like to have this view on the society better, is to show them that the difference is not bad, it's good, and we can learn from each other.
It's really the education, right? The education, raising the awareness of this. Because if we are not educated, then like Ellen said, we're scared. We just don't know, and we're not sure how to interact and how to face that. It's not that we don't want to. And as a board member, is that something that you could work on more in raising awareness, rather than just maybe being a one-off volunteering?
For sure, one of kind of our main contributions as a board is to kind of be kind of one of the voices for the organization and help spread the word, help society understand the work that we do, but also the challenges that these communities face and why this work is really important. But a lot of the work on the board has to do with keeping the organization, legal, safe, well run. So a lot of it has to do with making sure that we have good governance, that we're raising funds, and that we are advocating for the organization. So then the wonderful team that we have working at Love 21 can go ahead and, reach as many people and as many families as possible.
So I think what leads to my another question, to changing a subject a little bit, as I said, these children in the TV program were involved. And how does being like included in school, in activities, in the community influence the overall well-being of children with Down syndrome or autism?
I think this is the same for everyone. The more we are included, the more we feel, we are valued and, we are an important part of society as well. The less that happens, of course, the more we face exclusion and the more that impacts physical health, mental health, so on and so forth. So for sure, again, for us, having that, creating that sense of community and making sure that both our beneficiaries, both the children and their families, feel that they are included, that they're seen, that they're taken care of, helps build that overall well-being of the entire community. And I think this is really important to remember, that it is not just the children themselves, it's also perhaps individuals who are neurodivergent, but it's also their families, their immediate environment, their carers. So the negative impacts affect the entire kind of ecosystem, and similarly, the positive impact can also affect the entire ecosystem. One of the things
And you
that,
see the differences as well, right? Because I'm sure you
yes,
interact with the parents and with the caretaker, because
yes,
they bring them
yes,
to activities too, right?
yes.
Um,
One of the things that was extremely touching to me was just a couple of months ago, we had our celebration of ability, which was an entire evening of performances, of dance, of, magical tricks. And I remember, as you're sitting in a theater and you're facing the stage and you mainly see the children performing. And you're very proud. You see the smile on their faces, you see them performing well and waving at everyone and being super happy. But then at some point, the lights started opening up, and I turned around and I saw their parents and their families' faces. And that was even more of an overwhelming feeling for me because seeing them feeling so proud with such big smiles on their face, many of them kind of like crying tears of pride and joy, was truly an incredible moment, I think, for all of us in the audience. So for sure, it
So
is the
overwhelming
ecosystem.
that
Yes.
moment. Yeah.
Yeah, and on the
And you
other
also
side,
connect with the children too, right? Because you also see them when you do volunteering. Yeah.
Yes.
yes, and on the other side, how has volunteering and board service influenced your own well-being, your sense of purpose, stress, how you see the world?
Well, in so many ways, I think for me, does it aligns like to my some of my core values, which are kind of helping others, and it does give me this deep sense of purpose that you're on this planet to not only make sure that your life is okay, but also to help others and less represented and underprivileged groups also have a better life if possible. So to me, being able to contribute to the community in the small ways that I do, because for sure the team does so much more than us on the board. We're merely there to kind of, assist whenever we can, but it really does drive a sense of purpose and a sense of accomplishment. And I know that my life would feel half if I wasn't able to do that. Um, but also, I feel like volunteering gives you a sense of optimism that you believe and you actively
I
try
don't think I've
to
met any
have.
volunteer who is not optimist. Like
Yes,
they're all quite
yes,
happy and joyful.
yes. Because you feel that you are giving a hand towards a
Yeah.
better future, for the community that you live in. So for sure.
I think that there is like a lot of, you give the energy, but you receive so much more.
Yes,
No matter how much energy I put to the volunteer after the whole day, I'm thinking I gain so much smile, joy, powerful, it's so grateful. And I'm so grateful for my volunteer work. And I know that Cecilia is the same. You sounds like it too. So I'm so
yes.
happy that we can tell more about this in our podcast too. It's so interesting conversations. It's so sad that we need to a little bit wrap up and to sum up all those things that we said. Can you share us from your experience if someone who has never interacted with a neurodivergent kids, how should we approach them?
Thank you. Thank you for asking this actually, because I know for many people, um, they might be kind of afraid or reluctant to interact because they're not sure, they don't want to do the wrong thing, they don't want to, offend anyone, and
Yeah.
it is very understandable. It comes from a point of respect.
Yes.
And of course, there are considerations to keep in mind, but I think like on a bottom level. Uh, for sure, we are all just human, so the same level of kind of respect and consideration should be given to everyone, not just the
Yes,
neurodiverse
agree.
community. Um, but if I had to give a couple of tips, I think the first one would be to be patient because every individual is different, every individual is unique. And so sometimes it might take patience to really understand the preferences of the child or the person that you're interacting with. For sure, kind of, observing and understanding what are the sensory, for example, boundaries that this person has. Maybe some of them do not like physical touch, or maybe some of them do like
Mhm.
physical touch.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some may not like loud noises. So
Mhm.
you really have to kind of be patient, I think, and observant and understand what would work best for that individual. And I think a lot of it is also accepting that we don't need to correct anyone. There's no right behavior. If we kind of observe what is the preference as we would with
Yeah.
anyone else, really. Have a good attitude, have a big smile on our face. I think that's more than enough.
Yeah, I think like
I,
what share with me if you this volunteering work is act normally. Like
Yeah.
are you be acting with your friends, families? Like it's as long as it like normal your style. Of course, it need to be polite and good in any ways, but still like act normally.
and if somebody listening to us today and they want to honor Children's Day, no matter which part of the world they're at, and in particular, maybe also they want to start supporting neurodivergent kids, what are the few things that they can start doing right away?
For sure. I love that question. I love the call to action. I hope
Call for
everyone who's
action.
listening will
Yes.
go and do
Let's
something
start today.
afterwards. Um, I usually kind of like help when I people ask me this question about how can I help. I kind of help. The first thing for me is to start understanding it at three different layers. So the first layer is, I think, looking at ourselves and looking how much do I know about this community? How can I educate myself better to understand this community? And then I think like the next, it's almost like three circles. Like the next circle would be my immediate environment, my friends, my family, my workplace. How can I influence and help them also
Mm.
understand and raise their awareness? Maybe invite them to volunteer with me, for example. And then the third layer is at community level. So how can I kind of spread the word on a larger scale? How can I help an entire organization if I can? How can I start my own NGO if I have the means and the energy
Yeah.
to do that? So my kind of call would be to kind of look at it from like an individual perspective, my immediate circle, and then a society, let's say, perspective. And I think I would call people to for sure, number one, volunteer. As we said, when you have more exposure to that community, you understand it better and you help reduce the stigma and the prejudice. For sure, help spread the word. That's really important. Help spread awareness of not just that community, but how everyone is unique and we need to understand and appreciate everyone for their uniqueness. And
Yeah.
of course, like any NGO, I would say if you can donate as much as you can. Um, One of the main challenges all NGOs have are being able to fund not only their programs, but actually their operations. And this tends to
Mm.
be really, really difficult. A lot of people would give money for a program or for a child or for something very specific, but we have almost 20 staff. We need to
Mm.
have premises and pay rent and, have overhead costs and
Mm.
pay good salaries to our people who do so much work on the front and give so much of themselves into this work. So for sure, if people can afford it, I always encourage everyone to donate whatever amount they feel is, appropriate for
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, I like that because thinking back, actually, when I first started volunteering right after when I start working, obviously didn't earn a lot of money. So what I can do is just what I can do with my hands, like building school, like be a part of the building schools or teaching English, and then starting maybe after a couple of years. I have a bit more cash. Then I started
Yes.
donating. So that's why I think is whatever ways that works for you, you could
Yes.
start thinking about doing that. And for those who are in Hong Kong who are listening, if you want to follow the foundation Love 21 and start your volunteering work, where should they go?
I am going to give you the link to Love 21 Foundation, but I would encourage you. We're actually building a new volunteer platform. We need as many of you as
Okay.
possible.
Wow.
Um, I think it's a great opportunity to do it as an activity with others. So, like we went together on a walk, for example. I encourage people to reach out to their friends, do it as a family activity on a Sunday, for example.
Nice.
Go to your team at work and do it as a team building activity, and that will probably leave you a lot more satisfied than just having a couple of glasses of wine together.
Yes, we
100%.
will
I can
put
vouch for
all
that.
the yeah, we will put all the info in the bio and your IG page and every detail you will find under the episode. And I think what we need to add here, like I really like to say to everybody, like donate, but still what is next to do is like to changing in the government. So we can be more funds and other stuff. Like in Poland, part of our taxes, we can every year we can give to NGOs. So
Yes.
every year we have that opportunity to give some part of our tax to NGOs. So I always
Oh, that's
encourage
nice.
my friends and family to found their own thing that they want to help. And for anyone can be a different thing. So find your thing that you want to
Yes.
help, and maybe volunteer for some hours, some days. I
Yes.
love that this is a fulfilling word. I have so many friendships from my volunteering work. So just let this message spread that volunteering is good. Let's donate. Let's change something in our governments to support the NGOs. I think that might be a good message to end our episode. And thank you so much, Eleni, for joining us. It was a
Thank you
pleasure to
so
have you
much.
here.
For having me.
Bye, Eleni.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Well, thank you for joining us today. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Tell us what you think about this episode. Maybe you want to share your volunteering experiences as well. We'll see you next Monday.
See you next
Bye.
Monday. Bye.